If I'm going to be a world champion, I got to get past a guy like this. And listen, I tip my hat. If you're saying that and you're making these fights happen, and listen, he's looking for the smoke.
Welcome into Boxing Scene's top stories. You're on ProBox TV. Download the ProBox TV app. Never fall behind in your boxing news. Well, KEYSHAWN Davis, a big homecoming fight, Norfolk, Virginia, against Argentina's Gustavo Lemos, 29-1, 19 knockouts. That's in the immediate future. But in the not-too-distant future, he sees a showdown with Gervonta Davis. Of course, a guy who right now, most people's, pound for pound, certainly top 10. Is that being a little too ambitious? Jimmy Smith in studio, joined by the champs on Zoom, Chris Algieri, Paulie Malignaggi. Look, when the Bob father, Bob Arum, as you like to call him, Chris, says you're a future star, is that maybe pushing KEYSHAWN Davis a little too far? 11 pro fights, and he's talking about Gervonta Davis. A little too much too soon? What's your thought on it?
No, not at all. With someone with an amateur background like KEYSHAWN Davis, went back to the Olympics after he turned pro and was able to medal. I mean, the kid has the pedigree. He's got the mouth, he's got the brass. He's looking to make these big fights happen. And listen, we live in a world of Twitter beefs and social media. And listen, fights can be made by that. But also, even if the fight can't be made, you're still getting attention. We're talking about it today. So it's not a bad idea for KEYSHAWN Davis to be calling these fights out as long as he wants them. But a lot is going to be answered this weekend against Lemos, man. Lemos is no joke. This guy, Gustavo from Argentina, he gave Richardson Hitchens all he could handle and a weight class above this one. And Richardson Hitchens is good. He's a very good boxer. He's long. He's got a good jab. He's another guy who's fighting for a world title in his very next fight off of the win against Lemos. So KEYSHAWN Davis, I spoke to Carl Moretti about this particular fight. I said, hey man, this guy Lemos is tough. You're really putting KEYSHAWN in there. He goes, yeah, absolutely. Lemos is tough. You're absolutely right. He's like, but KEYSHAWN asked for this. He said, if I'm going to be a world champion, I got to get past a guy like this. And listen, I tip my hat. If you're saying that and you're making these fights happen, and listen, he's looking for the smoke. So I appreciate that in a young fighter. So too much too soon? Hey, you might say that, but listen, I like it. If you're gonna be brash and you're gonna go for it, I'm all for it.
Now, Paulie, you've been critical of Gervonta Davis's choice of opponents. Take on Lamont Roach, a natural 130-pounder who has fought on our air before. Not the heaviest puncher in the world. What's your thought on KEYSHAWN Davis as a possible opponent?
I'll tell you what. Yeah. First off, you probably have to go into the fact that there's a PBC and top rank divide there as well. Right. So it wouldn't be the easiest fight to make unless it's a major fight. So I don't know that KEYSHAWN Davis's reputation yet is so big that you can sort of vie for that, at least from the top rank perspective, that they'd risk their guy against a guy like Gervonta Davis. And that's pretty much the roadblock, because if it wasn't for that roadblock, I mean, Gervonta Davis will fight the guy who's going to deliver my food later, and he has no problem doing that. So, I mean, I don't think that it would be anything else aside from a promotional hurdle there. As a matter of fact, I think Davis is probably a little green behind the ears. He's shown some things, that, although he's extra talented, as a pro, he's still got to mature in one or two other things. So I think that there's probably time for KEYSHAWN Davis to do it. But if there wasn't the promotional hurdle, the obstacle for these two guys being in different promotional stables, honestly, it wouldn't shock me if they would make the fight. Even now, I mean, I do think it's a little soon for Davis, but and again, I mean, compared to some of the other opposition Gervonta's fighting, it's it's not bad actually. Davis has a reputation. He's an Olympic silver medalist. You can sell it.
What's your thought on that, Chris? You and I have talked a lot, off air about, it's in the 90s when I was a young man watching boxing, under 20 fights, when you got a world title fight, no matter what your amateur background was, you considered, wow, that's a little early. May need a little more seasoning than that. You're looking at a guy who's 11-0 and you're going, oh, he might be there. What's changed? What's different about the state of boxing that a lot of times we're seeing big fights, 10, 15 fights in?
Well, it's the amateur pedigree. It's it's who these fighters, what they've done. It's long gone you've got decades prior to this in the amateurs, and they weren't making the money then. Now they can.
When you look at the X's and O's a little bit, assuming this fight happens at some point a year or two down the road, what might KEYSHAWN Davis have that Tank Davis would have trouble with, Paulie, in your opinion? Is there anything?
If there's a discipline, range control, obviously, I mean, when he's at his best is a bit of a discipline range control that he fights at. I think Davis is quick. He's got sharp twitch muscles, but he's sometimes a little slow on his feet. But again, you would probably have to develop Davis a little bit more if he's going to have a chance to beat him. They could fight for the Davis last name, Gervonta Davis against KEYSHAWN Davis. Whoever wins keeps the Davis.
Whoever wins keeps the name. But Paulie,
I don't.
yeah. What I'm curious about.
I don't see the fight happening right now.
What I'm curious about, Paulie, is when I look at Gervonta Davis, his tendency to fall behind early and then come back late with his power, could a boxer who can keep the pressure on for 10, 12 rounds, is that the key to beating a guy like that? Like, he falls behind and then you box too well to come back. Is that going to be the issue for him?
Listen, I criticize Gervonta for the level of his unique picks, but when you see him fight, he knows exactly how to beat you. He's not doing that every time. With Frank Martin, he took it right to him. He went right, stepped on the gas right from round one and stepped to him. Maybe he wasn't throwing a lot of punches, but he was mentally pressuring him. So I don't want people to mistake my criticism for Gervonta as me feeling he's lacking in any department. My criticism is he's so good that I want to see the best fights made possible when I see a fighter this talented, So, I don't think that this whole reputation of him falling behind, I think he knows we can and can't do it against. I could honestly, for what you see of Davis right now, KEYSHAWN, which again, the fight's not going to happen now, but say for hypothetical reasons, because we're on the subject, the fight happens right now. I could see Davis probably taking the approach he took against Frank Martin, which is to step to him, step to the novice pro, despite his long amateur career, and try to step to him and mentally try to stress him because of the physical power deficiency, that difference that there might be there. That would probably be the way I would look at it. I don't think Davis, if he fights this kind of boxing style, is going to let himself fall behind. He understands we can and can't fall behind. If you watch him against Martin, it's a big tell right there. I think even if he fights Shakur Stevenson, which is a fight we probably want to see way more than we want to see him against Davis, you also going to probably see the same thing where I could see a guy who's going to try to step to you a little bit more to get you out of your comfort zone a little bit earlier. So we'll see how this plays out. But I think KEYSHAWN is just trying to make his name. It makes it clickbait for him to talk about Gervonta. You associate your name with some of the bigger names in the sport. And I don't mind him doing that. That's, with those views on social media, that's where you're supposed to do it. But I don't think the fight happens right now. I think we're just talking fantasy.
Chris, what's not fantasy is the Gustavo Lemos fight. You said Lemos a very, very tough customer. If you beef with somebody, you have to back it up against whomever you are fighting next. Just put extra pressure on the Lemos fight. You think he goes harder for a finish? What's your thought on this beef affecting his next fight that is right around the corner?
I don't think it has any effect. I think this is a make or break fight for KEYSHAWN Davis, regardless of the beef with KEYSHAWN Davis. I don't think KEYSHAWN Davis has anything to do with this fight. This is a huge step up in class for KEYSHAWN Davis. And echoing what he said, if I'm going to be a world champion, I got to be able to beat guys like this now. And there's not a truer statement in the world. If you want world titles, if you're calling out guys like Tank Davis, you're calling out the guys at the top of the sport. You got to be in tough, and Lemos is tough. Champ, you had mentioned Frank Martin. I'd actually like to see KEYSHAWN and Martin fight before KEYSHAWN gets a shot at Davis at Tank. Excuse me, we got too many Davises. I think that would be really telling as well. I think stylistically, I think what he would learn in those fights, one with Lemos and one with a guy like Martin, who's a little bit better boxer than Lemos, but also brings intensity, I think would really help in his development, getting into a fight or trying to be successful in a fight against a guy like Tank. So there is some more development to go. And you got to go 12 rounds, man. 12 rounds is a really long time, especially with a guy like Gervonta Tank Davis who has that eraser. You got to be disciplined for 12 rounds. A very, very long time to fight 12 rounds in a professional boxing match at the highest level. So I think I agree with the champ. I think there's a few more steps before we see a KEYSHAWN Davis versus Tank Davis matchup. But he's got a tough one in front of him this weekend. And I think we're going to answer a lot of questions with this fight come Saturday night.
Well, it's Gustavo Lemos taking on KEYSHAWN Davis this Friday. But Saturday, it is ProBox TV coming to you from Kissimmee, Florida. It is going to be an outstanding night full of fantastic fights. Do not miss them. Download the ProBox TV app now and never fall behind.
ProBox TV Contender Series. It's Puerto Rico versus Mexico as Nicholas Nico Flaz returns to the ProBox ring to take on Christian Ninote Gomez. Darrell Blast Val Saint looks to keep his undefeated record against Angel Relampago Ruiz. And don't miss former world champion Jojo Diaz as he returns to the ring in search of glory.
For more ProBox TV, scan the QR code on the screen or go to the App Store and Google Play. ProBox TV, your boxing channel.